I discovered my husband was tracking my every move the same week I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept through the night without being woken up. My name is Jennifer. I'm 48 years old, and for the past 6 years, I've been married to Robert, a man 22 years my senior who defies every stereotype about aging. When we met at a charity gala in Chicago, I was freshly divorced, vulnerable, and tired of men my own age who seemed more interested in their phones than in building something real. Robert was different. He was attentive, successful, generous, and yes, incredibly passionate. His energy was magnetic. I felt seen for the first time in years, and when he proposed after just 8 months, I said yes without hesitation. I thought I'd found my safe harbor after years of stormy relationships. The first year was beautiful. Robert owned a chain of hardware stores across Illinois, and though he was semi-retired, he still had the drive of someone half his age. He took me to his lake house in Wisconsin, bought me thoughtful gifts, and made me feel like the center of his universe. His adult children from his first marriage, Michael and Patricia, were polite but distant. I understood. I was closer to their age than to their fathers, but Robert assured me that with time, they'd warm up to me. I believed him because I wanted to believe that this new chapter of my life would finally be the one where everything fell into place. But somewhere around our second anniversary, things started to shift. Robert's passion, which had initially felt flattering and exciting, began to feel relentless. He wanted intimacy every single night, sometimes multiple times. At first, I tried to keep up, thinking this was just part of our rhythm as a couple. But months turned into years, and what had once felt like desire started to feel like an obligation I couldn't escape. I found myself making excuses, pretending to have headaches, staying up late to work on my laptop just to avoid going to bed at the same time as him. The guilt ate at me. Here was this man who loved me, who provided for me, who never raised his voice or mistreated me in any traditional sense, and I was pulling away from him. If you're relating to any part of this story, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and it helps me share these real experiences with people who might be going through something similar. The exhaustion became physical. I started waking up with my body aching, feeling drained before the day even began. I went to my doctor in downtown Chicago, worried something was seriously wrong with me. She ran tests, checked my thyroid, my iron levels, everything. When the results came back normal, she asked me gently if everything was okay at home. I lied. I smiled and said everything was perfect. How could I explain that my marriage was suffocating me not through cruelty, but through an excess of desire I couldn't reciprocate? Robert noticed my withdrawal, of course. Instead of giving me space, he doubled down. He'd surprise me with lingerie, book romantic getaways to places like Nashville or Denver, leave notes telling me how much he needed me. Each gesture, meant to be loving, felt like another weight added to my shoulders. I started to feel like I was disappearing, like my only role in this marriage was to be available, to be willing, to be enough for someone whose appetite I could never satisfy. And the worst part was that I had no one to talk to about it. My friends would have killed for a husband as devoted as Robert. My mother thought I'd hit the jackpot. Who complains about a man who wants them too much? Then came the discovery that changed everything. I found the tracking app on my phone completely by accident. I'd been having issues with my battery draining too quickly, and when I looked at which apps were using the most power, there it was, a program I didn't recognize, running constantly in the background. When I researched it online, my stomach dropped. It was a location tracker, one that sent real-time updates to another device. Robert had been monitoring everywhere I went, probably for months. I confronted him that night in our bedroom in Evanston. His face didn't show surprise or shame, just a calm explanation that made my blood run cold. He said he'd installed it because he loved me and wanted to make sure I was safe. He said with everything going on in the world, he needed to know I was okay. But his eyes told a different story. This wasn't about protection. This was about control. This was about a man who couldn't bear the thought of me having any part of my life that didn't include him. We fought for the first time in our marriage. Real fighting, with raised voices and tears and words that couldn't be taken back. I told him this wasn't normal, that I felt suffocated, that I needed space to breathe. He looked at me like I'd stabbed him, his face crumpling in a way that made me feel like the villain in our story. He asked if there was someone else. The question hung in the air between us, and I said no, because at that moment, it was true. But the seed had been planted. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. These stories need to be told, and your engagement helps more people find this channel and realize they're not alone. I started going to a coffee shop in Lincoln Park 3 mornings a week, just to have somewhere that was mine. Robert didn't object, but I could see the tension in his jaw whenever I announced I was leaving. The coffee shop became my sanctuary, a place where I could sit with my laptop and pretend I was working on the consulting projects I'd abandoned when I married Robert. The truth was, I mostly just sat there, drinking overpriced lattes and feeling like myself again, even if just for a few hours. That's where I met Daniel. He was 36, a graphic designer who worked remotely and seemed to live in the corner booth with his sketchpad and noise-canceling headphones. We started with polite nods, then brief conversations about the weather or the latest news. He had kind eyes and an easy smile, and he never asked for anything from me. Our conversations grew longer, deeper. I found myself sharing things I'd never told anyone, about feeling lost in my own life, about not recognizing the woman I'd become. Daniel listened without judgment, without trying to fix me or tell me what I should do. He just listened, and that simple act felt revolutionary. I knew I was walking into dangerous territory. I could feel myself looking forward to those coffee shop mornings in a way that had nothing to do with the coffee and everything to do with seeing Daniel. We exchanged phone numbers, supposedly to recommend books and podcasts to each other. The first time he texted me in the evening, just a simple message about a song he thought I'd like, my heart raced in a way it hadn't in years. I felt alive again, but I also felt the crushing weight of guilt settling over me like a blanket I couldn't kick off. Nothing physical happened between us for months. We'd just talk, sometimes for hours, about art and dreams and the versions of ourselves we'd lost along the way. He told me about his divorce, about how his ex-wife had said he was too quiet, too content with simple things. I told him about Robert, carefully at first, then with more honesty than I'd shown anyone. Daniel never judged Robert or encouraged me to leave. He just held space for my confusion and pain, and that made me want him in ways I couldn't fully admit to myself. Robert's children started visiting more frequently. Michael would drop by unannounced with his wife and 2 kids, filling our house with noise and barely concealed assessment. Patricia called her father daily, conversations I wasn't included in that would leave Robert quiet and withdrawn. I overheard enough to know I was the topic of discussion. They thought I was after his money. They thought I'd tricked their father into marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. That they saw me as some kind of predator when I felt more like prey, trapped in a gilded cage of expectations I could never meet. The night everything came crashing down started innocently enough. Robert had dinner with his children at a restaurant in Oak Park, and I'd declined to join them, claiming a headache. Instead, I met Daniel at a quiet bar near the lake. We sat close together, his arm eventually finding its way around my shoulders as we talked and laughed about nothing important. For the first time in years, I felt beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with being desired and everything to do with being understood. If this story is resonating with you, please take a second to subscribe. It helps the channel grow and ensures more people can share their experiences too. We didn't kiss that night, though we came close. The moment hung between us, electric and terrifying, until I pulled away, mumbling something about needing to get home. Daniel walked me to my car, and just before I got in, he took my hand and said, "You deserve to be happy, Jennifer. Really happy. Not just comfortable or secure, actually happy." Those words echoed in my head the entire drive home. Robert was waiting up for me. He was sitting in the dark living room, and when I walked in, he turned on the lamp with such deliberate slowness that my breath caught in my throat. He knew. I don't know how, but he knew. He asked me where I'd been, and I told him the truth, that I'd gone out for a drink. He asked if I'd been alone. The pause before I answered lasted an eternity. When I said yes, his face didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened in a way I'd never seen before. The interrogation lasted hours. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo, grainy and taken from a distance, of me and Daniel at the bar. Someone had seen us? Probably sent it to Michael or Patricia, who'd forwarded it to Robert. He demanded to know who Daniel was, how long I'd been seeing him, whether I'd been unfaithful. I tried to explain that nothing physical had happened, that Daniel was just a friend, but the words sounded hollow even to my own ears, because the truth was, I had been unfaithful. Maybe not with my body, but certainly with my heart and mind. Robert didn't yell. That would have been easier somehow. Instead, he cried. This powerful, vital man crumbled before me, asking what he'd done wrong, how he could fix us, why I wasn't enough anymore. The guilt crashed over me in waves, each one more suffocating than the last. I wanted to comfort him, but I also wanted to scream that I was drowning, that his love felt like it was crushing me, that I needed air. Instead, I just stood there, frozen between compassion and resentment. We didn't sleep that night. We talked in circles, him asking the same questions in different ways, me giving the same insufficient answers. By dawn, we'd reached a fragile truce. I promised to stop seeing Daniel. I deleted his number from my phone right there in front of Robert. I agreed to couples therapy. I said everything I thought would stop the pain I saw in my husband's eyes. But even as I made those promises, I felt something inside me hardening, a small voice saying that I couldn't do this anymore, that saving this marriage might mean losing myself completely. The therapy sessions were brutal. Our counselor, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen who practiced in downtown Chicago, tried to create a safe space for both of us to share our perspectives. Robert talked about his fear of losing me, about his first wife leaving him for someone younger, and how he'd vowed never to let that happen again. He talked about how his desire for me was an expression of his love, his way of feeling connected. The therapist nodded sympathetically, but I could see her taking notes, and I wondered what she was really thinking. When it was my turn, I struggled to articulate the suffocation without sounding ungrateful or cruel. How do you tell your husband that his love feels like a prison? How do you explain that you're exhausted not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of constant expectation? I tried to talk about needing space, about feeling like I'd lost my identity, but Robert kept interrupting, asking if this was about Daniel, if I was still in contact with him. The sessions devolved into the same circular arguments we had at home, just with an expensive witness. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're finding value in these real stories. Your subscription truly makes a difference. I kept my promise about Daniel for exactly 6 weeks. I didn't text him, didn't go to the coffee shop, didn't even allow myself to think about him during the day. But at night, lying next to Robert while he slept peacefully, satisfied after yet another evening of forced intimacy, I'd imagine a different life. I'd think about Daniel's quiet understanding, about conversations that didn't demand anything from me, about being seen as a complete person rather than just an object of desire or a trophy wife. Then Daniel texted me from a new number. Just 3 words. Are you okay? I stared at that message for 2 days before responding. When I finally did, it was just as brief. No. That single word opened a floodgate. We started talking again, secretly this time, with an app that deleted messages automatically. We met once at a park in Naperville, sitting on a bench far from anyone who might recognize me, talking about everything and nothing while the guilt gnawed at my insides. The physical affair started during a rainstorm. Robert was in Milwaukee visiting Michael, supposedly to help with some renovation project. I'd stayed home, claiming I had work to catch up on. Daniel and I had planned to meet at the coffee shop, but when the weather turned, he suggested his apartment instead. I knew what I was doing when I said yes. I knew I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But I went anyway, tired of being good, tired of sacrificing my happiness for everyone else's comfort. What happened in his apartment that afternoon wasn't wild or passionate in the way Robert's desire always was. It was gentle, slow, filled with a tenderness I'd forgotten existed. Daniel held me afterward while rain drummed against the windows, and I cried, not from regret, but from the overwhelming relief of feeling like myself again, even if just for a few hours. He didn't ask me to leave Robert. He didn't make demands or declarations. He just held me, and that was enough. I became someone I didn't recognize. I lied constantly, creating elaborate excuses for where I'd been and what I'd been doing. I met Daniel whenever I could, stealing hours from my marriage like a thief. The guilt was omnipresent, a constant companion that made food taste like ash and turned every tender moment with Robert into a reminder of my betrayal. But I couldn't stop. For the first time in years, I felt like I was choosing something for myself, even if that choice was destroying everything around me. Robert's health started declining. It was subtle at first, just a little more fatigue, a few more aches and pains. His doctor ordered tests, and the results came back concerning. His heart wasn't as strong as it had been. The stress of our struggling marriage, combined with his age, was taking a physical toll. The doctor recommended rest, less stress, maybe cutting back on some of his more vigorous activities. When Robert told me this, looking smaller somehow, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him, the guilt nearly destroyed me. I tried to end things with Daniel. I told him we couldn't do this anymore, that Robert was sick and I needed to focus on my marriage. Daniel understood, or said he did, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. He asked me if I loved Robert, and I couldn't answer. The truth was, I cared about Robert deeply. I felt responsible for him, guilty about hurting him, desperate not to be the person who destroyed his final years. But love? Real, sustaining, life-giving love? I didn't know anymore if I'd ever truly felt that for him, or if I'd just been so grateful for his attention that I'd confused gratitude with love. If you're still watching, please consider subscribing. These stories are about real people facing impossible choices, and your support helps keep these conversations going. Patricia found out about Daniel. I still don't know how, whether she'd hired someone to follow me or if she'd just gotten lucky. She showed up at my house one afternoon when Robert was at a doctor's appointment, let herself in with the key Robert had given her, and confronted me in my own kitchen. She called me every name you can imagine, told me I was killing her father, that she'd known from the beginning I was a gold digger and a whore. I didn't defend myself. What could I say? She wasn't entirely wrong. She gave me an ultimatum. End the affair and stay with her father, making his remaining years happy, or she'd tell him everything and make sure I didn't see a penny when he died. The calculation behind her words was crystal clear. This wasn't about protecting her father's heart. This was about protecting her inheritance. I'd been so focused on being seen as a gold digger that I hadn't realized Robert's children actually were worried about gold, just not in the way I'd thought. They didn't care if I broke their father's heart, as long as I didn't break the bank. I ended things with Daniel that week. We met one last time at a hotel near O'Hare Airport, neutral territory where neither of us had memories. He begged me to leave Robert, offered to help me start over, told me he loved me in a way that made my heart shatter into pieces I wasn't sure could ever be put back together. I told him I couldn't do that to Robert, that despite everything, I owed my husband my loyalty. Daniel asked what I owed myself, and I had no answer. The months that followed were the darkest of my life. I threw myself into being the perfect wife, attending to Robert's every need, going through the motions of intimacy even though I felt dead inside. Robert seemed happier, more relaxed, as if my renewed attention had given him a new lease on life. His health stabilized. The doctors were pleased with his progress. Everyone told me what a wonderful wife I was, how lucky Robert was to have me. I smiled and nodded and felt like I was play-acting in someone else's life. Then I found out I was pregnant. At 48, with my body exhausted and my soul depleted, somehow life had decided to throw me one more impossible complication. The pregnancy test sat on the bathroom counter like an accusation. I did the math obsessively. The timing was ambiguous enough that it could be either man's child. Robert, who'd had a vasectomy after his second child, but occasionally mentioned that such procedures weren't always permanent. Or Daniel, during one of those stolen afternoons when caution had given way to desperate need. I didn't tell anyone for weeks. I walked around with this secret growing inside me, this physical manifestation of my divided heart, and tried to figure out what to do. An abortion would be the simplest solution, but every time I considered it, something stopped me. This wasn't about religion or morality. It was about the fact that this child, whoever's it was, represented something, a choice, a future, a reason to finally decide what I really wanted from my life. Robert was overjoyed when I finally told him. He cried happy tears, held me close, talked about how this baby was a miracle, a gift in his twilight years. He started making plans immediately, talking about converting his home office into a nursery, about finally having Patricia and Michael warm up to me now that I'd be giving him another child. I watched him dream about this future and felt like I was watching from outside my own body, disconnected from the joy everyone expected me to feel. Please subscribe to stay updated on how this story unfolds. Your support means everything to this channel and to people sharing their truth. Patricia's reaction was exactly what I expected. She accused me of getting pregnant on purpose, of trying to secure my financial future through a child. She demanded a paternity test, not once but multiple times, until Robert finally shut her down with an anger I'd never seen him direct at his children. The family fractured further, and I sat at the center of it, wondering how I'd become the person everyone blamed for their dysfunction when all I'd wanted was to feel alive again. Daniel sent me a letter. I don't know how he got my address, but it arrived on a Tuesday, tucked in with the regular mail, his handwriting on the envelope unmistakable. I waited until I was alone to read it. He'd written about his own grief, about letting me go, about hoping I'd find happiness even if it wasn't with him. He didn't mention the pregnancy. I don't know if he even knew. But at the end of the letter, he wrote something that I've replayed in my mind 1,000 times since. The saddest thing about us isn't that we couldn't be together. It's that you might spend your whole life believing you don't deserve to choose your own happiness. I'm 7 months pregnant now. The baby is healthy. All the tests have come back normal. Robert dotes on me, brings me tea and rubs my feet and talks to my belly about the life they'll have together. His health has actually improved, as if the promise of new life has given him renewed purpose. Michael and Patricia maintain a cold distance, but they've stopped actively campaigning against me, probably because they've realized that a baby in the picture complicates their inheritance plans in ways even they can't control. But I can't sleep. I lie awake at night, feeling this child move inside me, and wonder whose eyes they'll have, whose temperament, whose future. I wonder if I'll look at this baby and see the affair that nearly destroyed my marriage, or if I'll see a chance at redemption. I wonder if Robert deserves the truth, if knowing might kill him, if staying silent makes me a coward or a saint. I wonder what kind of mother I'll be when I can't even figure out how to be honest with myself about what I want. Last week, I drove past the coffee shop in Lincoln Park. I didn't mean to. I was coming back from a doctor's appointment and took a wrong turn. And suddenly, I was on that familiar street, and there was Daniel through the window, sitting in his usual corner booth. He looked up, our eyes met for just a second, and in that moment, I felt everything rush back. The connection, the understanding, the version of myself that only existed when I was with him. Then the light changed, and I drove on, leaving him behind like I've been leaving pieces of myself behind for years. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if this marriage will survive the weight of everything I'm hiding. I don't know if Robert will still love me when he's tired and old, and I'm the one who has to be strong enough for both of us. I don't know if his children will ever see me as anything other than an interloper. I don't know if I'll look at this baby and feel joy or resentment or some complicated mixture of both. I don't know if I made the right choice in letting Daniel go, or if I've just sentenced myself to a lifetime of wondering what if. What I do know is that I'm exhausted from pretending, from carrying everyone else's needs and expectations while my own slowly suffocate under the weight. Exhausted from being the villain in Patricia's story, the prize in Robert's story, the lost love in Daniel's story, never quite the hero of my own. Exhausted from trying to be enough for everyone while never feeling like I'm enough for myself. So I'm asking you, because I genuinely don't know the answer, what would you do in my place? Would you stay in a marriage that provides security but costs you your sense of self? Would you leave and risk destroying an aging man who loves you, even if that love feels suffocating? Would you tell the truth about the baby's possible paternity, or would you let everyone believe what they want to believe? Would you try to find Daniel again, or would you accept that some doors, once closed, should stay that way? I need to hear from you. Comment below and tell me what you would do. Tell me if you've been in a situation like this, where every choice feels wrong and staying still feels impossible. Tell me if I'm the selfish person everyone seems to think I am, or if wanting to be happy isn't actually a crime. Tell me if there's a way out of this that doesn't destroy everyone involved, including myself. And please, if this story has moved you in any way, if you've seen yourself in any part of my struggle, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. These stories need to be told, and your engagement helps make sure more people know they're not alone in facing impossible choices. I'll be reading every comment, looking for guidance, looking for hope, looking for any sign that there's a path forward I haven't seen yet. Because right now, standing at this crossroads with a baby on the way and a heart divided between duty and desire, I've never felt more lost. And maybe that's the truth I've been avoiding all along. That sometimes love isn't enough. That sometimes security comes at too high a price. That sometimes the person we betray the most isn't our spouse or our lover, but ourselves. What would you do? Please tell me. Because I honestly don't know anymore.